Oh, hey! Welcome to Katie in the Morning. I'm Katie Page, the Director of Member Relations at the National Association of Healthcare Assistants. I've been a certified CNA for 15 years in the state of Iowa, and personally, I know that our lives can get busy when we're at work. We're constantly moving. We've got baths to give, meals to hand out, ADLs, plus the nurses asking us to do extra things, restock the supplies, that sort of thing. So sometimes we don't have the chance to ask the questions that we want to ask on a daily basis. So I put a question out there to CNAs from all across the nation. If you have anything that you want to have answered, you can send me letters. It's called Letters to Katie, and I will give you advice or answer those questions for you. I had a rather large response to that, so I have a few of those questions here with me today that I'm going to answer for you guys and kind of address those issues that need to be addressed right now. So our first question comes from Peter Sullivan, and he is from South Bend, Indiana. And Peter asked, honest question, do you think just about anyone could be a CNA? Is it something that requires a special skill, just asking for opinions? Oh, Peter, that is a loaded question. It's been said that it takes a special person to do this job and that not everyone can do our job. First of all, professional CNAs don't look at it as a job. We look at it as a career. And the truth of the matter is, yes, anybody can be a CNA, but it takes a special person to be a good or great CNA. Some of the special skills that are required in that category alone are patients. I'm not talking about your residents. I'm talking about personal patients. These people come into the homes, into the facilities, hospitals, hospice, assisted living, skilled care, and they literally lose everything outside of that 8 by 10 room. Anything they can fit into that room is what they bring with them. And personally, I think it is our duty to accommodate to them and let them go on their time frame rather than ours. When you have 12, 15 residents assigned to you, that can be a very, very hard thing. But as you gain that experience and that knowledge to that person's routine, there are ways that you can allow them time to do the things that they want to do in the time that they want to do it and still get your assigned tasks done. The next thing that is required to be a great CNA is a positive attitude. When you hit that time clock, before you even slide your time card in or push those numbers, you have to think to yourself that this is your 8 hours to shine. This is your 8 hours to make a difference in somebody else's life. They're not here because they want to be. Well, some of them are. I've ran into a couple residents who have signed themselves into a skilled facility or a long-term care facility, so they're less of a burden on their family. But those are very far and few between. What we're looking at nowadays is people coming in on short-term care plans to be rehabilitated from surgeries in the hospitals. That's your main skilled people. But there's also people that come into the home to stay there for the rest of their lives. One of the ways that I look at it is they didn't come here to die, they came here to live until they die. And that's where that positive attitude comes in. You may be the last person that somebody sees ever. I mean, you don't know what's going to happen in the 8 hours that you're there or the 12 hours that you're there, so you really need to put that effort forward to make that each specific resident have the best time that they can in the time frame that they have left. The third thing that I think a great CNA needs to have in order to be the best that they can be is the ability and the willingness to gain knowledge. We're in a constant changing environment all the time. Rules and regulations from CMS, even the facility protocols and policies themselves change constantly. And if you're unwilling to learn and master those policies, procedures, and regulations, you're going to fall behind the rest of the crowd. If you're willing to go out there and kind of be the leader of the pack and take those things head on, then you will definitely be ahead of the crowd. One of the other things that I think that it takes to be a great CNA, and I think most of you guys will agree with this, is a sense of humor. You run into some interesting situations in our career field, and sometimes you have to just laugh it off. One of the main things I think is that we forget is that nurses have a responsibility to not just a hallway. Most of us are assigned 100, 200, 300, A, B, or C, the 12 to 16 residents on those halls. The nurses, the charge nurses, have hallway 100, 200, and 300 with 12 to 16 residents on each of those hallways. So it can be just as overwhelming and frustrating for them as it can be for us. And unfortunately, CNAs, majority of the time, are the scapegoat for that frustration. I don't think nurses, most of the time, do not mean to take it out on us personally, but we're just the person that's there at the wrong time in the wrong place, especially if they're having a bad day. So the positivity, the willingness to learn, the sense of humor and professionalism is the one that I think is probably the second greatest thing that you need to have as a professional and great CNA. Those family members they're not looking for a friend, they're looking for a professional to take care of their loved one. These people, majority of them, have their own family and their own friends, but they need someone that is an expert on their care plan, how they like things and when they want things. So that is my answer to your question, Peter. The second question that we have comes from Brandy Anderson, and she is from Shelby, Montana. And she said, so what do you do when you have an aide that uses not okay language in front of your residents? Has been told by many people to the administrator, and the response that you're not picking and trying to run, and the response is that you are picking on them and trying to run the said CNA out, and I won't have it. That's what the administrator said to her. What do you do? I love my residents and my job, mind you. I think that comes down to the professionalism that we were just talking about with the last question. CNAs need to hold each other responsible as much as the DONs, administrators, and charge nurses do. If you see something that's going on with your residents and you're there in that moment, don't be afraid to step in and say, hey, it seems like you need a little break, let me take over, and you can go cool off, or just remind them that these ladies and gentlemen, in their time, in their prime, they did not allow each other to speak that way in public. And it's very disrespectful to do it now, even especially since some of them won't be able to speak out for themselves. One of the main examples I would say is the bedridden residents that we have. Just because they can't talk and they can't express those emotions to us doesn't mean that they don't have those same concerns. The more independent and outspoken residents will definitely tell you if you're getting out of line in front of them, most of the time. I think we can all agree on that one. And if it doesn't stop, just start taking notes. Write down what happened, when it was said. If there's somebody else there that witnessed it, have them sign it too. If you have a problem, don't just let it be addressed once. Just continually keep coming and keep coming and keep coming, and eventually somebody is going to notice it. But if it's getting out of hand to the point where it's making you uncomfortable and kind of bringing down the morale on your hallway, like I said, don't be afraid to step in and just keep it positive. People react to a positive manner far better than they do to a negative one. You don't want to go up to that person and get into their face and like, you shouldn't be talking that way, but just say, hey, I don't know if you noticed, but you're kind of using some not okay language in front of these people. They pay us to be here. And really, that's what it comes down to. Yes, we work for the facility, but each one of those people that is in that facility is putting the money into the account to put it on our paycheck. So that's one of the ways that I look at it, is I may be employed by the facility, but I work for my residents. So just constantly reminding them and not giving them an audience. If you're kind of playing into it a little bit, even you may not even realize that you are. If you take the audience away from them and kind of ignore them, eventually they will stop if they don't have somebody hearing them. Those are our first two questions. We're going to take a little break here, and when we come back, we will take on the other two. We'll be right back.
We look at NACA as the professional organization that supports the CNA, just like the American Association of Long-Term Care Nurses supports the RNs and LPNs.
As a state executive, I can tell you that the energy and the empowerment that this organization has given to our state has truly enhanced the depth of membership and the work that we do as a state association. I am very, very proud of our connection and our partnership with the National Association of Healthcare Assistants.
For more information, visit us online at nacacna.org or call 417-623-6049. Tune in on to CNA TV every Friday at 3 p.m. Central Time for long-term care news with Dane Henning.
Welcome back to Katie in the Morning. We're going to take on our third question, and this comes from Lashana Bagwell, and she is from Greenville, South Carolina. Why does it seem like the lazy CNAs get praised and those of us who work our butts off do not? Well, this goes back to what we were just talking about, the negativity and the attention. People who react in a negative way often do it in a larger scale than the people that react in a positive way. They're also the ones that are going to make a disruption in the home, so they're the ones that get addressed first. Another way to look at it is administrators, DONs, charge nurses have all taken classes on mentoring. They have to be able to interact with other employees in the building and coworkers as well. So they've been taught and drilled into their head to reinforce negativity with positivity to try and change that person. Like I said, people react to positive reinforcement way, way, way better than they do with negative criticism. As preceptors, we're taught to come at things as sort of like a bypass. If somebody's doing something that you don't feel is right, you just kind of step in and say, hey, I noticed that you're doing this. That's a great job, but let's try it this way, or you might want to try this way. That's what administrators, DONs, charge nurses, ADONs, they're all taught to. I think it's called let me think about this one for a second. I believe it's called like a manager's class or a manager's course that teaches them to do that. And that's why it seems like they're getting more attention. But in the CNA world, if you're left alone and not bothered by a DON or administrator, a lot of times you're the one that's doing the good job. They don't come to you and they don't pick on you unless there's something wrong. That's really not the greatest scenario that we want, but unfortunately that's just the way it is. And it's not going to change unless CNAs themselves change it. I mean, we're 90% of the frontline caregivers in the facility, and if we don't speak up and say, you could go to, on that note, you could go to your administrator and DON and say, hey, I have an idea, I'd like to appreciate or acknowledge the CNAs that are doing a great job. Could I work with you on this? Or bring them a specific idea of like gift baskets or cards, or even just having their name posted somewhere in the facility saying this person's doing a great job. Eventually those negative people that are constantly getting that attention from them, that attention is going to get pulled away because they're seeing all this positivity around the facility, and they're going to strive for that. They don't reach for a bar unless there's one set, in the simplest words. And then our last question is from Ashley Cross, and she is from West Chapter, Alabama. Who or what made you decide to become a CNA and why? Whew, let's see. That is 15 years ago, so you have to give me a minute. I became a CNA when I was 17. I worked in the nursing home for 2 years before that. I come from a small town in Iowa, which actually had 2 facilities in it, and my mom worked at one of them. She was on the overnight shift. Like I said, I was a junior in high school at that time, and I was working on buying my first car. And my mother told me that if I wanted to have a car, I had to pay for part of it myself. So I went to the dietary department at the local nursing home, and I was working in there. And it was actually our director of nursing that came to me and told me that, she said, Katie, you're in the wrong department. I see the way that you communicate with these people in the dining room. You need to be on the floor as a CNA. Do you want to take the course? We have one coming up. And she also told me that it pays more. So at 15 years old, I was 16 at that time, I guess, I was all for the more pay. I had a really heavy schedule at school. I was heavy into cheerleading, drill team, color guard, that sort of thing. So I started working the overnight shift when I became certified. And it was really just my groove. I fell into it. It was perfectly in place. Just like a social butterfly experiment, I guess you'd call it. I had a really good orientation with CNAs from that center because half the town I was related to and the other half were all friends. So we just it just clicked. That's what made me become a CNA. Once I got into it, there's no getting out. And I did go through a 5-year bad spurt of like we were talking about those negative people. I was the negative person in that facility. I ended up quitting. And then my roommate asked me if I wanted to come work At this time, I was 18 and living with her. That time, if I wanted to come work at the facility that she worked at in about 15 minutes away in a surround or a suburb, I guess you call it, of the town. And so I went there, and once my negativity just fumed at that facility, and it kept up for years. I left there probably 2 years later into the new facility. My DON kind of pulled me into her office, and I was ready for the red slip, like, pack your stuff and get out, you're done. Several write-ups for negative attitude, showing up late, not being in uniform. If there was a new CNA starting and I didn't like them, they didn't stay there very long. I worked the 3 to 11 shift, so at 5 o'clock, all the business managers were gone, and me, my best friend, and my cousin pretty much ran the 3 to 11 shift. And if we didn't like you, like I said, you weren't there very long. Either you quit or we found a reason to get you fired. And then finally, my DON pulled me into her office and said, you have a great leadership skill inside of you. You're just taking it in the wrong direction. So she introduced me to NACA and sent me to the preceptor course in Des Moines, Iowa. And that was the first time I ever saw Lori Porter talk in person. And I remember sitting there and watching her, and I said, I want to be her. Like, I don't want to work with her. I don't want to learn from her. I want to be her. She's such an inspiration. I left that class and never looked back. Became a certified preceptor in the facility, leadership team captain at that facility, restorative aide, med aide, and then I served on the Iowa Steering Commission for CNAs, and then the National Steering Commission for NACA. And now here I am 15 years later working for the National Association of Healthcare Assistants and putting my heart out there to CNAs across the nation to try and help them change their jobs into a career as well. So that's kind of that's actually, you won't believe me, but that's the short story, the short answer to that question. If you guys have any questions or anything that you'd like to share, you can send it to the CNAs for Quality page. Go on and friend me on Facebook, and I will add you to CNA for Quality's page. You can also send it as a message on the National Association of Healthcare Assistants Facebook page, or if you visit the website at www.nacacna, that's NAHCACNA.org, in the bottom right corner there's a peer chat feature, which if you click that, a box will pop up and you can send a message in real time, and someone from the office will, if we're on, we will get back to you immediately, and if not, we'll send you an email back. The thing that we inspire most to do is to change the world of CNAs for a better place, and we welcome that in any way, shape, or form. You can also call the office at 417-623-6049. I thank you guys for joining me in the morning for Katie, and I will see you right back here tomorrow.